Sorry, folks, in case you didn't hear that, let me just start over. We are at Turning Point Radio here at KPFZ 88.1 FM.
It can only be attributable to human error.
We got lots of that around here in this town. And what does this town need, Jim? Oh, no, he's not quick enough on the trigger. Anyways, this town does need something. It needs some truth. Oh, what does this town need, Jim?
This town needs an enema.
Oh, geez. Sweet. Okay, well, again, I'm Ron Kiczenski. This is Turning Point Radio, and we're just having fun with some sound effects that we are playing with today. But the real issue here today that we want to speak to is what's been... oh, wait, first let me make this announcement. We have the Lake County Food Shed, local food for local consumption, building a secure and sustainable food shed. And that is a great thing that's happening October 18th, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Big Valley Grange at 1510 Big Valley Road in Findlay. And they're going to have lots of great stuff to learn and take part in there concerning creating a secure food shed and being independent, growing your own food, canning and all the rest. Really great stuff going on there. So we hope folks can make it out to that on October 18 in Findlay on Big Valley Road. And let's see if there's a phone number. I don't see a phone number. Okay. So just try to remember that. Look it up somewhere if you get a chance. Boy, a lot has happened since the last show concerning media and sorry folks, we've got technical difficulties going on here, so I'm trying to work around it. But there's been a lot of press of late as far as story in the newspaper, letters to the editor, things on the radio concerning the measures, specifically Measure O and Measure P that are coming up on the November ballot. And, we've got Allen here filming for TV8. Wanted to let you know that as well. And I wanted to ask Allen, I forgot to grab my water out of the fridge. It's right in the green room. And I'm afraid if I don't get it, I'm going to run out of wetness in my mouth.
You've got a real attitude problem, McFly. You're a slacker. You remind me of your father when he went here. He was a slacker, too.
Oh, jeez, I know. Whoa, okay, sorry about that. I will try to be better. I'm going to be a better human being. Do a better radio show. So here we go, anyways. So, first I just want to point out to folks, in case they missed it, that there was a fairly decent story. I wasn't too unhappy with it, except for one little part, maybe in the Record B last Saturday. That's.
Go ahead.
That's not it, Alan. It's water right in the door on the fridge. In that fridge right there.
What are you doing? We're talking.
Well, we're just having some fun here already. Anyways, Alan brought me someone's old Pepsi. That was almost gone. Anyways, okay, so, yeah, there was a story in the Record B on this last Saturday, and the headline was 3 pot measures on ballot. Well, they actually did a correction in Tuesday's paper on page 2, explaining that there is, not 3 measures on the ballot. There's 2, but those 2 measures end up being sort of a referendum on Measure N that was passed in June. So I'm sure that's why she had that headline that way. It just ended up, I think, misleading some folks. And that's not the part that I really had a problem with. And frankly, I was happy with most of what she, described about the measure P, that is, and the problem I had with it more came down to one description, one paragraph that went, says basically, however, the measure provides no limits for cannabis plants, does not mention regulation in terms of distances from schools or bodies of water, or the need for fences or locks. It also requires complaints against growers to be handled by direct mediation at the county's expense. Okay, well, the last bit there implies that all complaints would go to mediation. That was, they did run a correction on that in Tuesday's paper. Jesus. Okay.
Giant web of nebulousness.
It's in the door of that fridge out there. What? Honest to God, and it's in a plastic grocery bag, brand new water, and oh boy,
Who cares?
Okay, so this is just fun, and it should be. I hope you guys are having as much fun as we are. Probably not, but
You said it wasn't in there, Doug.
there it is. Thank you, Alan. Wow, I got some water. Woohoo!
There's miscommunication and
Okay.
in some of the things.
Poor soul. He was just too high strung.
That's true, and it always happens to me. I just have a problem communicating. So let's try harder. Right. So, geez, where were we? I had just read that little bit that I felt was misleading, and so I should make clear first about the complaints. And we're talking about Measure P here, which is called the Freedom to Garden Human Rights Restoration Act, and it's on your November ballot. And what it does is it restores and protects your natural human right to grow the natural plants of the earth for your own use. And in that statement right there contains a whole world of possibilities and your rights. So this measure is not by any means just about cannabis. It doesn't even mention cannabis in the measure. It's just that cannabis is one of the naturally occurring plants of the earth. Okay, so anyways, concerning cannabis, because that's what, there's a war over cannabis here in this county, and people are concerned about that particular plant. And so that what I just read from the B is the paragraph that specifically is referring to laws and restrictions and regulations regarding cannabis that either exist or don't exist in the measure. And so I feel I definitely need to clean that up or correct that because it just isn't accurate. as far as the complaints go, now, the measure absolutely protects against any environmental damage or anybody creating a health risk. And in those two situations, if someone has a complaint that there's environmental damage happening or a health risk happening, those complaints do not go to mediation whatsoever. Those complaints go and are the county environmental health department is directed to direct mitigation concerning those complaints, and that mitigation is at the expense of the home gardener who is creating the problem. If there is a problem, if it's a very viable, damage to the environment problem or health risk problem, it is not the county who pays for that mitigation. It is the person who is creating that problem, and it does not go to mediation. It goes to mitigation. It's really important because anyone who read this article...
Sorry about this.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit silly.
It is, and you should be sorry. Really, who should be sorry is the folks who misled the reporter in this deal, because that's what happened. Anyways, so obviously, if there's complaints to do with environment or health, like I just said, those are mitigated under the authority and direction of the Department of Health and at the expense of the home gardener who is creating the problem. Now, if there's any other complaints that do not relate to a health risk or environmental damage, then those are the complaints that would go to mediation. So, and if I could ask you to just hold your calls for a minute, because I really need to kind of get through some of this stuff here, and then I'll be asking for your calls in a minute if you have time to call back. So, anything that has to do with, let's say, just something you don't like. You're annoyed by the smell, or now if the smell became a health risk, if you could show that it was medically verifiable that you were allergic to the smell or that it was causing some negative effect to your health, that's a different story. That would also go to mitigation. But if it was just a complaint that you didn't like a smell, or some annoyance that didn't have to
jump
do...
in the mud.
Yeah, right, no, but you would jump in the mud of mediation at that point. So you would... Hey, it's Dennis. Just come. Boy, we're just nonstop here. People coming in and... all people we love, thankfully, but I love everyone. Even,
me too.
Right on, Dennis. Even if it seems like I don't, sometimes I actually do.
That's a joke, yeah.
No, it's no joke. I mean, just because I, may disagree with certain folks, I mean, adamantly. Hell, I might even say you lied about something. Doesn't mean I don't love you. Straight up. I love everybody and everything on this planet. That's why I do what I do. And I'll keep doing what I do until I run out of breath.
You junkies and losers.
No, I don't even use those words. So hopefully, okay, now let's get to the, so we talked about the complaints, but in that paragraph, it also sort of, I think, leaves people with the impression that there's no environmental protections. There's some, obviously from what I just said, that would be a not a true statement. I mean, not only is there environmental protections, but I believe they're better than the ones that describe setbacks, for example, because Measure P doesn't allow for any environmental destruction or damage whatsoever, period. It doesn't matter if you're 2 feet from a water body or 2,000 feet from a water body, okay? It does not allow for it. So I don't really see, the need in that respect for all these extra little details about setbacks and whatnot. Although I would say that Measure P leaves that open for the Environmental Health Department to develop any regulations to go along with Measure P that they choose to, as long as those regulations didn't deny or disparage the human right that's established by Measure P. So obviously, if the county felt the need, they could add to Measure P those types of setbacks, although it doesn't need it, because it doesn't allow for environmental damage whatsoever. Doesn't matter where where your garden is. And the same with schools, and talking about certain feet from schools. Listen, this measure does not allow for any health risk, any public health risk whatsoever. And if it was determined that someone growing a garden near a school, it's hard for me to imagine how that's a health risk. But if it was determined so, then the health department would be able to do something about that. So, it's just, I think it's super important that people understand this measure for what it actually is, rather than what certain special interests, narrowly focused interests, are trying to get folks out there to believe about this measure. It's really distressing to me that we're lucky enough to have a chance to vote on stuff, even your human rights. Can you believe that? There's almost no place in the world where you could be voting on your own human rights in this way. I'm sure there's a couple places, but not many, because they all have different forms of government. So when we have this opportunity to vote, the best we can hope for is that people are properly informed when they go to vote, that they know what they're voting on. But that would take truth. And a problem.
Is your mind good?
Well, barely. Because we're being bombarded at all levels, federal, state, here locally, with inaccurate information that comes from sources that have certain motivating factors that are not necessarily in keeping with, the whole population. Okay, and one of the things I wanted to also reflect on was a letter that was in the Record B. I guess it was partly in response to that story, and sorry about the noise here. I'm trying to find it real quick. It's from one of the Measure O proponents. And Measure O is specifically about medical cannabis, so it doesn't have to do with any of the other things that Measure P affects. But at the very beginning of the letter from the Measure O proponent, it says, "I have heard that in politics and civil societies, compromise equals success." And it goes on to say, cannabis cultivation in Lake County has become a very heated and polarizing subject. There are people on both extremes that are unwilling to compromise at all. These are the people that will never change their minds. And then it goes on to say, fortunately, the majority of citizens, the light's really bad in here, folks, not to mention my eyes, but the majority of citizens and voters do agree that we all need to... Thanks, Dennis. Dennis handed me some glasses. And, oh, wow, they work. Oh, my... I can see.
Dollar store.
Wow.
Dollar store.
You just made a whole new world for me, Dennis.
Velocity, 21 gigawatts! 1.21 gigawatts!
Okay. Fortunately, the majority of the citizens and voters do agree that we all need to meet in the middle and respect each other's rights and needs. Okay. You know, I read that, and thanks, Dennis. Boy, I bet that looked funny on video, right there. You know, I read that, and I was, just kind of beside myself. That same person also declares in that story that was done by the Record B, at the very end of that story, that same person made a statement that, glasses again, said, speaking to Measure P, well, first they said Measure P will not pass. I always think that's an interesting statement. I always think people are usually saying that because they're worried something will pass. And then it says, I support its intention to protect citizens from GMOs, but that's a separate issue. Okay, so I just want to get back to, the first thing I read that person wrote, talking about compromise and people being reasonable and people being cognizant of and respecting other people's rights and needs, and claiming that their measure O, was the reasonable middle ground. Okay, well, I feel like, first of all, I should say right off the bat, I completely disagree. And to me, it's obvious that Measure P is actually the middle ground, the compromise. And I'll explain why. This person claimed in that statement that these other sides that were presenting measures, I guess Measure N and Measure P, are these folks of extremes, and will never change their minds. And
I got all kinds of guns.
Well, yeah, and a lot of them folks I'm sure do. But hopefully, Measure P is the kind of measure that will prevent them ever having to stand up and use those guns to defend their lives and their property and how they stay alive, etc., feed themselves. So, but the thing of it is that when we talk about extreme positions, you have to look at that and say, okay, extreme positions are obviously based on motivation. What's your motivation? Because it's your motivation that would help define if you are in an extreme position or not. And so, in other words, let's take Measure N, for example. If you had been out on the street with me gathering signatures over, the months we did that, and then now, out on the street trying to get the word out about Measure P and get people, actually correctly informed instead of misinformed, which is pretty much, if you're hearing about Measure P from, any of these other factions, you're getting misinformed. But if you're out on the street, like I have been, it becomes apparent that the foundation, the thing that created Measure N, and the thing that keeps pushing it even to this day, that motivation is clearly hate. Honest to God, if you go out on the street, you know, and talk to folks, you'll see. I mean, I've had, you know, a couple of people come up that, and this is in the far minority, but I've had a couple of people come up. One lady the other day, you know, well, they don't actually come up. I misstated that. They come by the booth. And one lady the other day, and we were set up at Walmart, came outside the Walmart doors. She looked at Annette, who was sitting in the booth, and Annette, of course, just smiles. She's as friendly as anyone could ever be. And the lady said to her, and Annette hadn't said anything to her, but the lady said to her, yes on N, no on O and P. And then she huffed and puffed and rammed her cart right through the center of our booth. Not around the outside of the booth where everybody goes, right through the center of our booth, trying to run over Annette's feet. I can almost assure you this is someone who hasn't even read the measure. And as she, you know, went on past through the booth, and Annette had to basically pull her feet back, then the lady, you know, got about 5 or however many feet, you know, past the booth and then turned back again and said, I said no on O and P, trying to get a response out of Annette because Annette, you know, just didn't respond, just smiled back. You know, that's an example. I mean, we had another lady come by, clearly, I mean, obviously hadn't read the measure, and just as she's walking by, just said, shame on you. Shame on you. That's hate motivation. That's when you don't even care to understand what's going on. You're just fueled on your hate. I had one lady come by at Kmart when I was gathering signatures. Didn't say a word, just walked right up. As soon as she got within earshot, she said, you're sick for doing this. And then went into the Kmart and told them that I harassed her. I hadn't said a word to her. It was on camera, so there's no way she could get away with saying that, but she did anyway. And then took a picture of our sign on the table from inside the Kmart through the window, and then I found that picture ended up on the web on the Yes on N campaign. Apparently she was one of their folks. And so what I'm saying to you is these are just few examples of the minority of folks that are driving this, that are motivated by hate. You know, I'm just sorry, that's the way it is. It's just like any other, when folks are out against gay folks, or they're prejudiced against someone who's a different color or whatever. It's
Come out of the closet.
Yeah, well, it's the same hate. And we need to bring those folks out of the closet and call them on this, because, and now here's where we get to Measure O. Motivation. If anyone hasn't figured it out by now, and anyone who was in a Middletown meeting where we were both given presentations, Measure O and Measure P, to the Middletown folks, anyone there can tell you that Measure O is about money. It's not about rights, it's about money. That's the motivation there. That is what exactly they told the folks up in Middletown the day we were, both measures were there giving presentations. So, and in that respect, what Measure O does is it sacrifices any real notion of human rights completely. They're completely out the window with Measure O. In trade for the possibility of making money. And it doesn't even satisfy medical patients' rights as per the law of the state. So it even tries to, yeah, we're going to hold off on that. It even tries to, cut back on the rights that are already established in this state. And it's doing that sort of in a way that is sort of almost like blackmail. It's saying that, here, you can either take what the county has given you, or you can take, Measure O, as if there's that much of a difference between the two. And frankly, there isn't really that much of a difference between the two in fundamentals. They both completely ignore the fact that humans have a natural right. And Measure O, it does a worse thing in my perspective. And this is why I would say that the Measure N and Measure O are the extreme positions here. The middle ground is the position that says all people, not just medical cannabis patients, all human beings have certain natural rights. Oh.
Of all you purple hairs, rough, rugged, ruthless, toothless, rebels, renegades.
Right. Those guys, everybody has these natural human rights. And frankly, these other two measures completely take leave of that fact, and they do it because they have specific motivations that aren't consistent with those rights. So I just really want to make the point that Measure P is the middle ground. It is the compromise. It's the thing that says we can stop all the ridiculous things that come along with the prohibition of a particular plant, like the high value of it that then leads to crime and organized crime and even murder. We can stop all that by simply recognizing that folks have their natural human rights that they're naturally endowed with. And fortunately enough, when you do that, you also take care of another situation where you've got the biotech industry coming in and taking advantage of the fact that you don't have those natural human rights declared. And they are fully expecting to completely privatize,
looking like Quasimodo,
your food chain. They want to take it over. And they're diligently pursuing that end. And it is your missing established, naturally endowed human right, missing from the law, that has opened the door for them to do that. And it's opened the door for this wildly overreaching government jurisdiction that is improper and unconstitutional in my mind, and we're trying to verify that with Measure P in terms of a people's vote. But how long are we going to allow the government to maintain this jurisdiction? Every time we find a plant that's useful to folks, every time we find a plant that's good for us, do we have to go through this FDA stuff? No, the FDA is trying to tell us right now that walnuts, if what we're saying is true about walnuts, as far as being good for your health, then they need to be regulated by the FDA. Oh boy, we've got the caller. I got a lot more to say, but I guess I'm just going to let calls. And you know what? I really want to keep it on this subject if possible today. And okay, caller, go ahead. Wait 1 second. Hey, caller. Torpedo Bay doors. We need to open those. And I just want to say before you come on, you're listening to Turning Point, KPFZ Radio 88.1 FM. I'm Ron Kiczenski. Caller, you're on.
Hi, it's me, Robert. You know what I noticed about the process in this county? They come up with these ordinances, like military ordinances. They have special interest groups they discuss them with. They have an agenda to get more greed and profit and use any kind of devious speech to get that way. You see, O issued forth from the same boardroom is ended, and N and O equal no. And every aspect of the O is embracing the same repressive aspect of N, about the process or the lack of it, privacy, anything to do with the Constitution. And I'm just seeing how that's, like you said, it's going to turn into a corporate picture where they're trying to make ginseng illegal and garlic illegal, and pretty soon they'll just... Can you imagine that Emerald Coalition? Well, even that's contemptuous. If, we take things to the court instead of trying to work with public opinion, for them to say, oh, well, this overgrowth and that at that time created their motivation instead of greed, well, that's a lie. That's contemptuous because it was covered under the old ordinance. And it's the same.
Hey, you're patching out there, Robert.
Oh, it's all about revenue generating, and they, like everything in O, they wanted to have in N, but the only way they could get that profit from the people is to have an O. And I mean, in any other county, if they tried to do that coalition or whatever their special interest group, they would be kicked out of the county for even trying to control the people's human rights like that.
Well, yeah.
That's how I feel. And for them to say, oh, this is a no on N, that's contempt, that's devious speech to go, oh, this is the no on N, or, when we're voting, you either vote on a thing or you don't. You don't call your bill the no on that. I mean, that's contempt, that's devious. And then now they're saying, oh, that y'all's thing is inappropriate for this, for that. And everything they say is untrue.
Yeah, everything they say is untrue. God, I heard, just to jump in, I heard a guy that's running for Clear Lake City Council being interviewed. I heard the repeat on Monday, and everything that guy said about Measure P was absolutely opposite of the truth. I mean, honest to God, in fact, it made me wonder, okay, is this the kind of, because for me, Measure P is almost a test on whether someone is even qualified to be in government, because government's supposed to be about protecting your natural human rights. According to the Constitution, that is the purpose of government, and everything they do is supposed to relate to that. Well, I heard this guy come on this radio station and claim that, and it was obvious that he either never read Measure P, right, because he couldn't be able to make the statements he did if he had read it, or he read it and misunderstood it. Either one of those, frankly, has me question his capability of being in government, because if you don't read something and then you just go by someone else's word and you make statements in public on the radio that that may be your opinion, but your opinion is based on what? Because you're stating the opposite of what the act really does, or you've read the act, and believe me, a fifth grader could read this act and understand it. Okay, so either you read the act and you don't understand it. Well, how could you be qualified to be in government if you can't understand this particular act if you read it? So not only does it reach and protect, resecure and protect your fundamental human rights. We're talking about baseline, growing your own food and medicine, taking care of yourself. This is what it does. Okay? It doesn't allow for environmental destruction. It doesn't allow for public health risk. It protects in every way that needs protection, but it restores your fundamental human rights. Now, how in the world could we possibly think anybody was qualified to hold an office that couldn't, hey, it's one thing if you read it, understood it, and disagreed. If you read it and understood it and were honest about what it does, and then you disagreed and you said, no, I don't believe this is a human right that people have to grow the natural plants of the earth, that'd be one thing. I could actually respect that opinion. I could respect that someone has that opinion. But when someone has opinions that are based on, obviously, complete ignorance of what they're talking about, In this instance, it would be Measure
Or
P.
just disdain, pure disdain and ravenous aggression is what it's more like, because it's more like retarded than aggressive.
I'm not going to go there, but I would say this. That this person in particular that I was listening to on that repeat on Monday should especially understand discrimination. I cannot understand how someone like the person I heard being interviewed on that Monday, he has the same name as a boy kangaroo in Australia. That person especially should understand discrimination and recognize it when they see it, and not. And that person is in full favor of Measure O, which continues the discrimination, continues putting people who grow this particular plant, the cannabis plant, on the back of the bus. Okay?
It's all about profit, revenue generating, making everybody pay all that money.
Yeah, Robert, it's all about profit, exactly right. And so that's the bottom line. You've got hate motivating the Measure N that's in place. You've got money motivating Measure O that you have a chance to vote on. And on Measure P, you've got human rights that are not just, thanks, Robert, the human rights that are not just for medical cannabis patients, but for all people, all human beings. I think we have another caller there.
Hey, man, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Robert. Caller on line 2.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, when you was explaining that when you was in the booth and those ladies, gave you that really hateful signs of, well, I felt, I just kind of flashed me back to the 50s on how those people used to treat, the indigents when they were kids.
Of course.
In the schools, in the stores, restaurants, they look at you and get that wrinkly nose kind of look and put their nose up in the air and walk away, or they say something, really dumb like, you brown little niggers or something like that, that say, oh, you featherheads, or shut out featherheads, the bus driver used to tell me. And until my dad stopped it. But I felt that hate, you know what I mean, when you said that.
I know.
I felt that hate being a brown little Indian boy, and these white women didn't like that part. They hated that or something, So you felt a little bit how I felt as a little guy in the 50s.
Exactly. And that's why, I mean, no matter what the discrimination is, no matter what the hate is, it's wrong. It's straight up wrong. It's wrong if you're doing it to Indians. It's wrong if you're doing it to anybody.
Well, it just proves that it's nothing changed. It's still here.
It's still here. In fact, we're still trying to literally institute it in the law. I mean, we're still trying to institute hate and discrimination in the law. Here,
I wonder if these people believe in a great spirit. I don't think they do.
I don't think folks acknowledge that we're all related, and Indian cultures knew that all forever, and now science has proven it. And so that's the bottom line. We're all related. I mean, if you hate someone, you're hating yourself. If you take someone else's rights, you're taking your rights. Mm-hmm. What we do to the least, we're doing to ourselves.
And I went up there to visit old Robert one time. I know he's listening, and he wasn't home. So I don't know if he's staying in the same place or what, so I was going to go up and talk to him, and I don't know his phone number, so I can't call him. But I heard him talking to you before me.
Call my house later. I'll try to get that number from Conrad. I think he has Robert's number.
All right.
I have it written down somewhere, but like all my stuff, it's piled up and geez knows where. So, Hey,
Well, good luck on that, bro. And maybe before the election, you come on my show and we can talk some more about it.
oh, I'd be honored, bro. Anytime to
All right.
come on your show. Thank you, and thanks for doing that show. We
All right.
need it. We need it. Don't ever give up. Don't ever quit.
Oh man, it's to me. I mean, I sit here all week. I mean, I never did check out this YouTube or check out websites or anything. But now I've been stuck here for over 20 days, just learning and learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. And it's not that it's just like I have to and I want to, It's not like I have to. I mean, it's like I want to, It's man, my brain is just filling up. It feels good.
And you know what, Clayton? Here's the thing. I just, I want to impart to you and everyone else. Whenever I hear someone say they're sick of talking about something, whether it's, genocide of the Indians and their culture, or whether it's a cannabis plant, or whether it's human rights in general, what it says to me instantly is that person doesn't know enough about this subject. I mean, that is exactly the person who needs to keep talking about this, whatever it is. So keep that in mind, bro. Don't let them get you down.
Well, I was trying to prove that when Europeans first came over here, the plan was to steal this land and kill all the Indian people, but I couldn't find, the proof of it. Then I found this thing, but Jefferson said it,
Yeah.
This is a white man. This is going to be a white man continent. And the only way we're going to get it, we have to get rid of the Indians. So that's why I'm researching and reading and doing all this stuff, because I want to prove that they planned this out, the extermination.
Well,
they planned it all out.
Check this out, Clayton. The beauty of that is when people are trying to do stuff like that, they usually get caught in their own trap. And what I mean by that is they, as white landowners, wanted to protect themselves as human beings, okay? So they wrote all these documents. Yeah, they wrote all these documents up to do just that. Now is our chance to beard the lion in his own den, because we can use those documents. Right now, those documents are supposed to apply to all of us, no matter what color or what station or class or whatever you are. And if we use those documents properly, like Measure P intends to do, if people realize it and understand what it is, I can't imagine anybody voting no on it if they really understood it and how it relates to every single human being. And if we use the Constitution properly, we can beard the lion right in his own den, and we can all have a better life for it, and our kids can have, their rights intact, etc. So, well, I welcome you as a native person, Ron. I welcome you to Lake County as a Himple person. You're welcome, and you're welcome to stay here as long as you want. Just be respectful to the earth, That's all we ask. Oh, thank you, man. I've been getting goosebumps when you said that. Thank you.
Well, I think every European needs that from a native person.
I did. And I've been here 10 plus years now, and that's the first time I heard it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care, man.
You keep up the good work, too.
Hey, thanks, man. Right on. All right. So, I'll throw out this website, Freedom to Garden.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Yeah, here's looking at all of us in the mirror. And let's figure this out. Who are we? Are we human? Are we not men? Are we Devo? What are we? So go to freedomtogardenact.org. Read that measure. It might help remind you what a human is, if you forgot. Because it establishes humanity back into law here in Lake County. And you could do us a favor and go on to Facebook and find Measure P Freedom to Garden Act and like us on Facebook, because we love to be liked. Hey, right on, Dennis. We got cameras, and I don't know what's going on in here, but we're almost out of time. We got about 5 minutes left. What else did I have here? Oh, I did want to mention this. I had kind of an interesting experience presenting Measure P to the Democrats Issues Committee. And I got to tell you, folks, that was bizarre. You know, one of the main proponents for Measure O, who has a show on this station, it was the chair of that issues committee. There was about 8 people in that committee, we. You know, I just want to say that it was bizarre because, so they had Measure O and Measure P folks there. Of course, one of the main Measure O people was chairing the committee. Now, the Measure O folks guy was in there taking notes the whole time I presented Measure P. And then, as soon as we got done, and as soon as they asked all their questions, and honest to God, it was like questions coming from political tar pits. I mean, I felt like I was talking to folks that needed to be rescued, and but there's no rescuing them. They wanted to stay right in their tar pit. So, but anyways, we were asked after we gave our presentation, and they clapped. And the Measure O folks were there taking notes the whole time. We were asked to leave the room while the Measure O folks gave their presentation. So it was very bizarre the way it all was handled. And all I could say is, thank God I'm not a Democrat. Because well, I'm not any political party, but I can tell you that, folks, if you're listening to the Democratic Party's recommendations, yeah, I guess another one of those. If you're listening to the recommendations of the Democratic Party, at least on this particular subject, and we got to wrap this up, I'm telling you, you better think twice, because they have no interest in human rights whatsoever, is what I discovered when I went there. Jim, we're getting ready to go out here. We're at KPFZ 88.1 FM. Ron Kiczenski, this is Turning Point. Come back again next Wednesday, 10 o'clock. We'll try to shake you up some more. And all right, catch you later. Thanks, folks.